Hello and welcome to the Free Cheese episode 540. I am your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Zellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Season 12 continues this week with the first game going on the list, Matt. The Guardian Legend. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. First, Matt, I'd like to know, what are your two favorite genres?
Oh. Say Soulsborne's up there right now. Like a turn-based RPG.
So how would you combine those two games into one grand adventure?
They are the exact opposite. I guess make an obscure, difficult RPG, which is just anything from the NES era.
Yeah. It's still turn-based, but you have to actually perform the turns or something.
It's just called an action RPG.
Yeah, it makes
or
you feel
Final
better.
Fantasy 14.
Okay, there it is. That's how you make. My two were Metroidvania and racing.
Okay.
I don't know how you'd.
Well, isn't there a game called like Speedrunners that kind of does that kind of stuff?
Oh, does
well,
it?
not Metrovania. Sorry, it's more like side-scrolling with randomly generated levels, and it's like a race to complete
that could be
the
fun.
sequence. I think that's the name of the game.
That could be fun. I'm thinking like to stay on brand with the theme of the year, a Project Gotham racing style game, but Metroidvania somehow. I don't know how you get there, but
oh well, Metroid. Nah, okay, no, I can't.
I guess just certain roads would be closed, and you'd have to backtrack once you know what I mean. You run into a guy who's like, "You can't come through here." And you're like, why not? Your car's not fast enough. So then you have to beat a race to get a better car. And you drive up and he goes, whoa, dude, sick car. And then he lets you through. And then you can do that race. But then, whoops, there's another road closed. You can't come through here. And you're like, hey, I got the car. Not that car. Yeah, well, sorry. Gotta restart. Game over. Matt, I asked this question because our game this week, The Guardian Legend, combines two genres into one. It kind of sets up a whole new adventure, I think, but more on that later. The Guardian Legend, developed by Compile, published, in North America at least, by Broderbund Software. IREM was the publisher originally. Released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In North America, April 1989. Back of the box reads as follows. Long ago, in a distant galaxy, an alien race sent a huge world called Naju, hurtling toward Earth, loaded with a cargo of mysterious life forms. During the long journey, these creatures have multiplied and become increasingly evil, and now Naju teams with evil. However, deep within this complex globe are self-destruct mechanisms that can be activated to destroy it before it reaches Earth. Now, you must battle your way deep within Naju's labyrinths to destroy it. You are the Guardian of Earth, and your saga will become the Guardian Legend. Got 3 bullet points on the back, Matt. The game features great shoot-'em-up arcade action combined with underground adventure. Choose from 12 different weapons to launch your breakneck attack against the monsters deep within Naju. And a password feature allows you to end a game in progress and resume it later. I assume we'll be diving into all 3 of those bullet points at some point today. Matt, what was your first impression playing the game? I want to talk about why I chose this for the list and everything else, but we like to start off with first impressions.
What the fuck? Because it died immediately.
It's in the first corridor.
Yeah, just I mean, half of it was me testing this to make sure my setup was working. But man, like, I did give it the old college try, and it did not end well. And then I booted, and then I died again. I was like, all right, well, at least I know it was kind of working. And then I came back to it with a more determined mind. And I got through that part. Then here turns out to be a whole grand, pretty much a fucking Zelda adventure with shoot 'em up in the middle in sections to break up the action.
Yeah, which that was why I added this game to the list. It was the first game I put on our season 12 list. And although, you know how my list making goes for these things, although my final count for this year changed a bit and what ended up on that list was different than what I had initially set out, this one never left. And this one was like the one I knew was going on. I had never heard of this game until sometime last year. And I probably reading old magazines or something. I don't know what put it in front of my eyes, but I learned of it and quickly became fascinated with it. I tried playing it for like 15 minutes or so, and then I was like, all right, let me stop. I want my first experience to be for the podcast, so let me wait on this one. But you're not big into shooting games, right? Like the old school top down. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say not my go-to for sure. I don't know, but if one does something interesting, I can gravitate to it. But no, I end up kind of liking this. I think the change of pace between the two playstyles, kind of like when you get sick of one, you're kind of ready to go into the next thing, or you're finding the next thing. Yeah, so I don't know. I think just it being two different genres actually helps it in a weird way here, or at least for me.
No, I think so too. That's what made it unique. And I think like now we have so many games that blend genre lines and combine genres in different ways that it's harder to notice sometimes.
Yeah, farming's and everything, we know.
Farming's and everything, but even prior to that, like
Crafting.
RPG elements being added to everything, right? Like Call of Duty is an RPG and NBA 2K is an RPG. Like all this stuff that, we used to associate with, no, that only happens in those games. Like elements are kind of all over the place. And this is one of those examples that's like, it's almost like they had two teams making two different games and they just said, what if we put them both in a game together? And I don't think that happened, but so this was developed by Compile, who had previously made Gardic for the MSX. So they made this as a sequel, but kind of in name only. It is a shooting game, just like Gardic was, and it has some elements that carry forward, namely just the lander character. In this game, for those who've played it, you'll recognize the blue lander and the red lander, the little circles with smiley faces. But other than that, it's just the name that carried over. In Japan, when this game released on Famicom, it was called Gardic Gaiden. So it kind of has that direct lineage that we didn't necessarily get in name over here. But yeah, Compile really did a lot of work on shooters back then. It had a lot of really, really great, solid shooters. Compile, that I've only recently become kind of infatuated with shooters in the last few years, and Compile was a big reason of that, playing their old Aleste series. But they would later go on to kind of redefine the dungeon crawling genre in their own way with the Puyo Puyo series. Well, Puyo Puyo was obviously the puzzle, but they did the stuff that led to Puyo Puyo. Anyway, Compile's pretty, I think, prolific developer. It's kind of weird because the core team has broken up and split off into different teams that are still working in different facets of the industry, making games today for different companies. A couple people are now at M2, which is why we got some of that stuff from M2 from the Aleste collection and whatnot. The weird thing with this one, I'll say, is like the shooting game parts of this, where you're actually going through a corridor, don't they're not like the strongest I think Compile's ever been with those types of games. And maybe for me, that's just in the sense that I feel like I never really felt powerful until the end. Did you get that sense?
I don't think I ever felt that powerful, but
well, okay, yeah.
So a bit of a loaded question, but I mean, yeah, but that's part of the mechanic, though. I don't want to maybe dive too much into here, but
go for it.
That is the benefit of exploring the entire area, is getting these mini bosses, finding the power ups, buying the level, finding it's a lander that sells to you.
Yeah. A blue lander sells you also blue landers.
Yeah. So a blue lander shop that gives you an opportunity to buy this or that for a weapon upgrade or health, whatever. But that's the reward for exploring, is you get to, kind of make your character more powerful. I know big things were attack up, defense up. I think rapid fire keeps building over time as you get them. And then the individual weapons, I think themselves, have 3 levels, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the thing. I think if you're just kind of going and trying to complete objectives, you're going to fall off a cliff and not feel powerful at all. Which I don't think I gave myself the exploring time in the first 3 areas, and then kind of quickly realized I'm falling off a cliff because of that. And part of it is this is an NES game, and I'm trying to figure out what this wants me to do. I read a little bit of an instruction manual and follow loosely a guide, but I was trying not to spoil too much. I was trying to explore, learn, or whatever. And then kind of once I got the gist of how this game works, I felt like I was just one level probably where I was, but that made me explore those other areas, and it definitely gets more difficult, but you get rewarded for persevering.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't. When I say I only felt powerful by the end, I mean once I came back through Area 0 to get to the final boss, I kind of then, because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe you had a different experience, but for me, I never spent too much time back in Area 0 after that initial run. Once I kind of got the keys to go to each area, it was really just where do I have to go? And I'd look at the map and see the blinking point and move right to it. So I never really, and you can kind of move quickly. You can kind of work your way through the game to if enemies start spawning and you realize, I don't have enough health to get, you can just jump to another screen and they'll despawn, or, you can avoid combat that way. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I was kind of, I always felt like the enemies were scaling with the player until the very end. Then I went through and I was like, oh wait, I'm actually I remember these things taking a few shots earlier, and this is one hit kill, whatever kind of thing. But yeah, so let's dive in a bit. You did a little bit, right? The actual gameplay, the progression of it, but you start in one main Area 0 is what they call it, and then you go through unlocking doors to get to corridors, and that part. How many of the corridor doors did you have to look up or reference a guide to get through? There were a couple that were
again, I don't think this game clicked for me until Area 3, so
no, that's it. Yeah,
I would say most, if not all.
Yeah, because there's a lot later on that are what was it? There was one, and the good thing is when you make your way through, you can find blue landers who give you hints on how to open the doors. And that, again, part of your point of exploring each section of the map, you kind of end up equipped with everything, right? You get the power-ups you need, you get the hint you need. So yeah, like the blue lander would tell you like, man, I forget the hint what it said now. Like the ones where you need to just go in and out of the door 5 times or whatever before it would actually open.
Yeah.
He would say something to that effect, like, hinting at that. There were a couple where you had to like shoot the sign above the door.
Yeah, that wasn't. I remember that one not necessarily being clear if I was doing the hint.
Yeah, there were 2 that were like, I read the hint and I was like, I have no idea what this is. And looking it up, I was like, I have to do that. What? But yeah, I mean, the game kind of runs on a loop at that point. Once you kind of realize, to your point, like area 2, 3, somewhere in there, you're like, okay, I know what's happening. You get to an area, you're moving your way through the world, like Matt said, like overworld Zelda style, attacking enemies, finding power-ups, finding items, and collecting chips are like your currency. And the thing I liked about the chip system is like, they also were the ammo for your secondary weapon. So you kind of had this risk-reward thing of like, well, it led to me, I don't know if you did this, like just stockpiling chips and never using my secondary weapon.
Yes. See.
Until some of the later levels. Later levels, I started to get more confident with how easily I could replenish the chips, especially like in the corridor sections. I was using the secondary weapons a lot, knowing that by defeating a boss, I was more than likely going to unlock more chips. And then did you use, I guess this is diving straight into the weapons themselves, but did you ever use the enemy eraser?
Oh, yes.
That one.
That's how I got through. I full disclosure, I did not end up beating this game. I tapped out. I hit the mercy card. I would not have gotten through some of those dungeons, or sorry, let me say the corridors without that weapon.
Yeah, some of those later ones, I was like, just enemy eraser. The enemy eraser, for the listener, if you've not played, it lets you literally just instant kill everything on screen. It uses its own separate ammo, so it maxes out at 255, and every time you find one of them in whatever area, you get 20 per clip. Usually I'd say like you could make it through a corridor if you used it like kind of once per screen, clearing enemies. Like you could probably go through 30 to 40 depending on whatever, maybe not even that many, maybe 20. But it did not work on bosses. So bosses, you needed to actually use whatever weapon. But a couple of the bosses, I was able to figure out ways that you could sort of cheese them a bit, and it worked out. Maybe I want to talk about bosses. Let's talk about the boss fights, because they were the core of the experience, right? Like you're kind of building to that to unlock the key. Maybe not the core of the experience. They were.
They're part of it. I would say those corridor. I kind of consider that as like the main event of each area.
Yeah, like once you got there, you get to see. So the main character is called Miria. You get to see Miria transform into a ship, which it's so bizarre. Like every region that this game came out in had different box art and a different look and whatever. But as far as I have read and understand, Miria is meant to be a cyborg, so she can fully transform in between spaceship and robot girl.
Full on Optimus Prime.
Precisely. But yeah, I mean it's such a cool like power up sequence. Like it's very Power Rangers. Like she just kind of spins, becomes a ship, and then flies off, and then now you're in the corridor. I guess, sorry, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself with bosses. What was your go-to weapon?
I was about to say the mine eraser, the enemy eraser. Yeah, that thing. I would say that, and I got a lot of them. Oh, the bullet shield was kind of a go-to for me. The one that spun around your character. Yep. I found that was very good against a lot of mini bosses because a lot of the mini bosses kind of have a mechanic to follow you.
Yes.
And sometimes they follow you so fast you really don't have time to turn and shoot. So I found like while running, at least that was like hitting.
Hit it. Yep. Yeah, I use that one a lot. That reminds me of there's weapons like that in other compile games that they're very useful. I found it not as useful as some of the ones in the other games because the other games it's a bit faster and it feels like it does more damage and it helps to like deflect a lot of the incoming bullets. Where this, you're not really getting shot at so much as you are dealing with things on the screen.
Yeah.
Other creatures or enemies or whatever. So this different.
I also be remiss to say the cutter laser, just full on Darth Maul walking around. It felt pretty good.
Double-sided,
yeah, and red.
Yeah, and red. Yeah. I only used that on one boss, and I forget which boss it was. Well, when we look at bosses, I might remember it. But yeah, I feel like I wasn't using it too frequently in the overworld, any of the sub weapons. Unless it was the mini bosses, because they took a bit.
No, yeah, that's kind of where I fell with that. Because like, I really didn't realize how easy the chips were to recover until like area 6 or 7.
Same. Because they seemed like they weren't. They were really, really difficult to come by.
I mean, from software thinking.
Exactly. Did you figure out the trick to infinitely refill your chips?
No.
It's very specific, but any of the sections where there's like the little, I guess they're pyramids that you would shoot that would reveal pickups.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
If you could shoot one of those that showed a blue chip pickup, but you left... So think of an L shape, right? Or like a corner. If you could have it exposed... have 2 flanking pyramids, and then you could come at it from a corner. It would never delete the pickup. It would just keep rewarding you with it. So you could just kind of like quickly refill in any...
Right, because this game has spotty hit detection on the up.
Yes. Yep. So that was a fun little like, oh, that didn't disappear. Let me grab it again. Oh,
well, I'm glad it's something benefited for you, because that's certainly the mini bosses that was a fucking nightmare.
No, that was... Yeah. But you can cheese it the other way. Were there any weapons you never used?
I feel like a lot of things I used once and was like, oh man, that sucks balls, and never used it again. And I would say probably about like 4 or 5 things. The grenade, fucking awful.
I ended up did not like it until... I don't remember the boss now. One of the bosses I ended up using, I think it was the final boss, I used the grenade on for most of it. It was, the final boss, yeah.
It was very hard for me to use the saber laser, which is just the one sword, when I had the cutter laser, which had 2. I think the chips burn as a little bit more on the cutter, but I'd rather have the 2. It looked cooler anyway.
It looked cooler, but the other nice thing about that is you could still move vertically. They would go out of your side either way.
Yeah.
Where the other one only went in the direction you were pushing the D-pad. So...
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then I want to say... I kept mistaking the repeller for the...
The bullet shield?
Yeah.
Yep.
And every time I used the repeller, I just got pissed off. So
yeah,
I used that one a lot by accident and didn't want to.
There was one boss that I saw a guide recommend the repeller for I was having trouble defeating the boss. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And it ended up being okay. I don't think I ever once used the backfire. Like, I don't even know what it looks like to come out of the Guardian. Everything else I kind of used here and there. The area blaster I didn't use a ton of, but yeah.
Oh, I don't remember if I used the backfire. I remember the wave attack.
The wave attack.
This guy, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, maybe I don't. Again, I think at some point I probably used one of these, especially when I save scummed like right before a mini boss, and it just seemed impossible. So I was just kind of throwing things at the wall to see what would stick. But yeah, no, there was definitely some I think I tried it once. I was like, I don't see a scenario at all.
Yeah, no. Did you have an enemy type that was most satisfying to defeat?
I don't. At first, it was the birds that kind of like flew, in like arcs along the screen. I know I'm making motions for, like this is a video podcast, but they usually went from like the top left corner to the bottom left corner in some kind of like arc that takes them towards the middle. And then also the same on the right side, or something like that, depending on how the screen was arranged. At first, they were fun to pick off, but then like you just found out they were very common.
Yeah,
The race for the spider was always fun.
Man,
I like that concept a lot. Do
you want to explain it?
Yeah. So if you, again, this is very like screen to screen, so you kind of move to the edge and it follows over. Zelda does that, right? OG Zelda.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you appear on a screen and then, enemies loaded, and that's how this works. But, like, for this one, it's just a lone spider just hanging out. But if you let it, like, hang out long enough before you kill it, or, you have the ability to kill it, depending on the placement and whatever, it starts to change colors. And after, I think, the third color, it multiplies out by 2. And then it keeps doing that. So it goes from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and then it becomes very overwhelming on screen. And yeah, you can take, if it got to 8, you can take out 1, but 7 are still going to multiply because you're not taking them out in time. So I don't know, I thought that was an interesting character or, enemy type to deal with. And yeah, and like sometimes you get some of the later areas, the way they lay out, like they kind of put like some kind of like pipe or metal barrier or something to kind of put you into lanes, and some enemies can cross over those lanes and you can't, which makes it frustrating. And that's like one of those kind of around there is when you start to see this enemy type.
I wrote down in my notes, where is it? That it's the first game to reward Matt for running away from spiders, because it was like you had to get away from it. But yeah, I think it was one of the final areas is when I finally could clear one without it duplicating, because I just my weapons weren't strong enough at that point. Or until that point. Were there any enemy types that were the most infuriating besides the spiders?
There's 2. There was the block thing, which was kind of like the spider, but it kept spreading, and you can't shoot that.
Those.
Yeah. So that was infuriating, especially when like it spawned in front of you, and like it sucks. A lot of that was just like RNG on the spawn. Yeah, you're at the mercy of that. And then the other one was those like. It was like those, I don't know if it was a crystal, but these like fast moving like crystal like little balls that would just like jump right on you. I think it's an enemy type you see fairly early, but this one just moves faster and it's like right on you, like almost immediately on screen. Especially again depending on where it spawns.
I had a bit of that with one of the mini bosses, the leech, where it's like. I don't even know what it
is.
Looks
it the
like
thing
a
with
sea urchin?
Is it the circle of the tentacles with the teeth in the middle?
Yeah.
That thing fucking sucked. I was waiting for you to get to the sub bosses. Yeah, no, that's the worst. Full on. That's the bullet shield enemy.
Yep. That was exactly No, the regular enemy type that was the most infuriating was for me actually like the piranhas. only because of the way that the piranhas would come down on both sides of the screen, alternating, kind of like staggered, right? So you'd go to the
in the
left side,
corridors. Sorry.
in the corridor, yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So you'd shoot
Yes.
them, and you'd go to move to the other side, and like you just could never get enough speed to take them out quickly enough. So inevitably, you'd have to wait for them to swim, but they swim at an angle. But sometimes the angle's not high enough for you to not clip it. Aggravating. When you were like otherwise having like a perfect run, like clearing everything on the screen, they would just throw it all off. I guess, did you want to talk about sub bosses before we talk about big bosses?
We can lump them together, I think, but no, that leech fucking sucked. I needed that. All iterations, all colors, doesn't matter.
Yeah. And the sub bosses kind of reappear throughout. There's a couple of different versions of them. There's a few that are only like a one-off, but otherwise you kind of fight a few of them throughout. It's always neat how that happens too, because you step into the screen and all of a sudden an alarm goes off and like little blocks come in to trap you in that section. And just like any other area in the game, if you're quick enough, you can just bounce out before this fight starts. But generally, you know, like, okay, it's about to happen.
That's
and typically, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Typically, you're rewarded with some sort of significant power up by defeating a sub boss, which is nice.
Yeah, not that I have like a super long review on this game when we put this up, but like that's something I mentioned, and like there's this is like part of that clever system of like you're encouraged to explore, but you're like tiptoeing at the same time because you know this shit is everywhere and a lot of it is difficult.
Yeah, like every step you take into a new screen, you're like, what's awaiting me? What's
the layout? What's the enemy type? Is there a mini ball? Like you're like every like piece of land you haven't been in or not familiar with, I would say, you're just kind of like.
Regular bosses. Did you have a favorite boss?
Oh, that lobster boy. He was pretty fucking easy.
Was that
I
Crawl Daddy?
Referred to here as Crawl Daddy.
Like they all have such weird Fleepa, Optimon, Bombarder, Clawbot,
Daddy.
Crawl Daddy. Yeah, good. I kind of really like the visual design of the eyeballs in, where was that? I guess Corridor 7. Yeah, that's what I have written down. Yeah, my notes for Area 7 say, love the organic look of this, reminds me of Metroid, and the eyeball boss is my favorite. I really liked...
yeah, it's like in that veiny...
yeah.
Structure. Yeah, that's a one-off, yeah.
Yeah, he was cool. And then... I think this is the one where... You might have... Grimgrin? Is that the one where you said, heck it?
Yeah, I think it's that one. Yep.
Because this one, he's terrible. He's shooting... This dude's after the eyeballs you face, but now he's like a floating head with 5 or 7 eyes who... shoots 2 laser kind of attacks. I don't even know what else to call them, but they're like kind of big, long laser things at you. But he also shoots eyeballs at you that move in sort of a sine wave pattern. So you need to avoid those. Those you can destroy, thankfully, but the lasers he shoots down, you cannot. And it sucks. And then when you finally like make your way through, like the nice thing is, as you're shooting him, you know that you're making progress because he starts losing more and more of his eyeballs, which is nice because the more eyeballs he loses, the less he can throw at you. But then all of a sudden, it just goes crazy. Once you get him to his like second stage health, he just starts raining stuff all over the place. the like plus side is you constantly are rewarded with power-ups because you're getting a lot more stuff that you're able to take out of it. But like the downside is that you're just screwed with just how much stuff is on the screen at one time. Yeah, I almost bailed on that one, but I ended up making it through. That one took the longest. It was the most like infuriating boss fight, toughest to get through. I did not have a good time.
Yeah, that one I was trying, when playing this game, I was trying to be very conscious of like not really save scumming that bad. I would like going into a new area, I would kind of make a save, and if I died, I would kind of reload that one.
Yeah.
And then if I died like a mini boss twice, I would make like a second one, like right on that screen. Like I would do stuff like that. But for the corridors, I would make myself kind of go through them again if I lost. I try to get that kind of more authentic live approach. And that was the first one where I stuck a save state right before the boss, and I still, after many tries, just couldn't. And my patience ran out at that point.
I did the same thing. I was trying to live this as organically as possible to, the original release. But yeah, same thing. Like save state at the beginning of whatever. I was doing them at the beginning of boss fights just in case I needed them. He was the one where I needed it, and it still took me like 2 days worth of play sessions to get past him. It's a nightmare. I do like that the game kind of gradually moves from the sea through a forest. Like there is like a kind of visual style that you go through to the mountains to then like whatever weird hell that the eyeballs and
it looks like some shit out of the end of Earthbound.
A little bit. Yeah. It's very much that like strange, sinewy, And then the final boss ended up being weird. The final boss, the one before, Igor, he's kind of like a different floating head, kind of a companion to Grimgrin. He was the one that I think I used the fireball on the most, because the fireball would actually erase his lasers as they came down. So that was a nice bonus. But you had to time it just right, the way his movement pattern, you really had to study that. But the neat thing is, like, you spend a lot of time with some of these bosses and really start to learn their movement patterns, so that when you go for the final boss and you learn that the final corridor before the final boss is a repeat of every boss you've already fought, you know exactly what to do. That was another interesting moment of feeling like true power, like I'd earned it, is when you start fighting the things again, like the Flipa and the Optimont, you just melt them, like, immediately. Crawl Daddy Part 2. Actually, I don't think you fight Crawl Daddy a second time. I think he's one and done. So it's not all the bosses that come through, but some of them come back. But any of them that you have to fight a second time, they're kind of quick. And then you've got,
No, I was going to say one other, just before you move on full on to the last boss, it was the Optimon, which was like the tether ball looking thing with the giant eyeball.
Yes.
The coral attack. My God, it would just melt you.
That one sucked. That one was, I think, the first time I learned you can use fireballs that can erase it.
But like, I got through his first variant kind of fine. I kind of learned his pattern, but there's other variants besides, of course, just being tougher and having more health. His coral move extended farther and quickly.
Yep.
And man, you just any other projectile in this game, for the most part, it's like, you take a hit, you lose like that little bit of life, and it's like that little bit is consistent. Now you can get hit 10 times in a row and melt quickly, but this like one hit on this coral, it is like bing, 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 and then you're just done.
Yeah, I forgot about how bad that was. Him, and then the same thing with the Clawbot. When you get the Clawbot to his like final phase, after his like front claws detach and he's just like rapidly firing lasers, you really have to time like your movement away from his path of destruction. Yeah, it's a brutal game at times, but I think a lot of fun. The final boss, you run through a whole corridor fight where you refight a bunch of bosses, but then you've got like a single eyeball with teeth and then also big arms. The only name I can find referring to him is just called It, which is fitting, but he kind of does the same thing that all the rest of them do, right? Where you're like, you start fighting him, you start figuring out a way to make it work, and then all of a sudden he throws something else at you that just makes no sense. But I was able to, I did your Darth Maul approach for one attempt at this, and I got pretty good with that. But I was burning through chips too easily. So I could get through his first phase, but when he transforms a bit and becomes faster and more aggressive, I had no chips. And the other part of the chip depletion that we didn't talk about is like, not only does that mean you can't use your secondary weapon, but it also means your primary weapon is not at its highest capacity. Like, it won't fire as quickly, it won't fire as powerfully. So you're really at a disadvantage once you get below a certain chip number. Yeah, he eventually, I was able to kill him. I don't know if you saw the ending at all. If you looked at a picture of the title screen or the credits scene when it pops.
No, you know what? I actually meant to, and I completely forgot.
I will drop it for you to see, and we can describe it for the listeners. But you get first you get a screen that shows Miria completely not looking like a robot girl, looking like an actual girl, in a little silhouette, and it gives you your final score, a small picture of space, and it just says the words "mission complete." Then those fade out and are replaced with "You are the greatest player," and then the credit scroll happens. Just wild.
I mean, this game is tough. You could be the greatest player.
Hey. The really neat thing, though, once you beat the game, you're given a new password. So we didn't talk about the password system. We talked a bit about saving and trying to stick to that original style, but the game uses a password system for constructing an exact save state, really, because anytime you go in and talk to a blue lander in a password area, he'll give you a password for exactly everything that you've got. Like, it's your exact score, your exact chip count, items earned, progress, all of that stuff. There's certain games where, like, the passwords back in those days, they would kind of get you an approximation of where you were, but not precisely. This, I do like that it tries its best, or it does exactly that. It gives you basically a stamp of your progress. Without actually saving.
I think I talked about this last year, but another game on our list, Super Empire Strikes Back. You have to acquire the force powers in that one level, and if you don't, it's fine. Throw in a password, then all of a sudden you have all the force powers.
Oh, I love that. So same thing here. I think that's what happened. So one of the first times you meet the password dude, I was like, oh, well, this is a good time for me to turn it off. Why don't I stop playing? Let me take note of this password. And I did exactly that. And I wrote down my password, which Matt can see here, and all of its stupid double-dotted glory.
Yep.
And then I came back, and instead of just taking a picture of the screen, I was like, let me write it up by hand, because that'll be cute, and it'll feel like 1988, 89. Then I go to type it in, and it's just like, nope, don't know what password you're trying to type in. So I have no idea where I screwed up or which letter I wrote wrong or typed wrong or whatever, but somewhere. So I was like, all right, well, I was through area 1. Let me just grab a password that starts me right there. And yeah, but so the cool thing, when you beat it, you unlock the password, and spoiler surprise out there for anyone who just wants this password to jump in, TLG. It's the only thing you have to type in. All caps, but or is it TGL? TGL for the Guardian Legend. Duh. And that just lets you play through a straight corridor mode. So you just do the corridor sections, no overworld map. But yeah. Did we hit everything I wanted to cover? The music? I really liked the overworld music, and I liked how like gradually you kind of got more increasing intensity throughout the progress of the game. I love the password system for what it tried to do, but I do hate how it's 16 complicated characters you have to type in. That,
dude, it's from the 80s, man.
True.
You gotta think of times.
I like that they did, as frustrating as they were, the little dots. I like that they did the 2 dots over a character to indicate lowercase, because that's a problem with Metroid when you play it. There's certain things where, like, on screen it's very obvious what those characters are, but writing them down you don't always know, like, is that a lowercase x or a capital X? Yeah, the other thing, like, I feel like some of the sub-weapons felt too similar to one another at times, so that was kind of a disappointment. But overall, like, I really liked the scale of this world. Like, how big it felt for an NES game. I felt like there's a lot to it. I sent Matt a picture of the map, but, like, even looking at the a screenshot of, like, my game at the end as your you have the full map unlocked. Like, it's just cool looking. Seeing, like, how you start in this little tiny area in the center, and, like, just how big and expansive it truly gets. A lot of rooms in here. A lot of screens, as they say. Yeah, final thoughts on the Guardian Legend, Matt, or anything we didn't cover?
No, this is the game. Go figure. Matt never heard of another game on the list before. Another one of those, but I know this. I think it's very underrated, very under the radar on a lot of when a lot of people, when it comes to like NES favorites. And I didn't beat it, and I have there's some minor issues with the game, but I think this is probably going to be one of my more favorite NES games kind of moving forward. I think it's impressive what it does on the NES. When you look at something like Zelda, which is like the all powerful adventure game on the NES, and then you kind of look at this. I know there's probably like 2-3 years difference. When did Zelda come out?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah, I mean, I know that has that to disadvantage, and I know after some time on a console, you get to learn how to its nooks and crannies. But I think at times this is a better game than Zelda, and it looks better, and And for a game that combines 2 genres like it does, they're both good. Usually when you have all these different systems being married together and it feels piecemeal, one of them usually doesn't feel good, and then the whole balance of the game is disjointed. But I think each part of this looks and plays well. I mean, yeah, again, super hard, but nothing. There's no stranger for this time either. It's just something. When we put it on a NES or SNES, or that Saturday, the Genesis game, kind of walking into it knowing I'm probably in for a brutal beating. But I think it's very underrated, underappreciated, and I will be sure to talk about this more when discussing the NES.
Yeah, it feels like a crucial part of that library that I wouldn't have thought of before. And yeah, to your point, like the complaints I have about this, I could say the same stuff about Zelda. Like, the areas feel too similar. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of repeat content in that original Zelda. Even the dungeons themselves.
I think it's the nature of the console and having to stretch something out for a mile.
Yeah. No, this is... I really, really like this. I'm pleasantly surprised. I was happy to see in some research leading up to this that, like, this does have a very wide fan base, a lot of fan art for the game, and a lot of adoration. There's a whole website dedicated just to, like, literally someone owns theguardianlegend.com, and they just use it as a place to talk about the game, which is rad. But at the same time, like, why is this not on the Switch collection. Why has this not been remade in some fashion? Like this, it seems like a perfect game. Like looking at all the stuff that indie game devs make and play, like all the Metroidvania style stuff, like this seems like perfect for that kind of, I don't know.
It's kind of wild. I think when I try to think of something like it, Nier Automata comes to mind.
Oh, interesting. Why do you think you've got that vibe from it?
Because Nier Automata plays with genres.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. It's the Nier Automata. I wonder how much Nier looked at this for inspiration.
Maybe, but I mean, think of the first 30 minutes of Nier. You played 4 different games.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And you're doing it to protect Earth. Same thing here. This is very.
Well, I wasn't making the story compare. I was making more of the gameplay. But yeah, no,
yeah.
If you start digging into it, it does.
It's basically the same game.
No, this one didn't make me cry though.
Fair.
Well, it made me cry in agony because fucking Corridor 8. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
anger tears.
I felt pretty emotional when I learned that I'm the greatest player. So there's that. Well, Matt, it's come to the point in the episode.
Right? Yeah, we rank games.
It's been a while. It's been.
I know. So I said, "Fuck yeah, we rank
games." Listeners, you can follow along with the list over at thefreecheese.com/thelist.
Oh man, I forgot.
High on this one.
I mean, I thought it was gonna be higher, but it's not. It's like not that high when I start to look at this list.
Okay, but like nuts for nuts or whatever expression I'm going for here. Looking at Sweet Home as a direct comparison, I feel like I like this over Sweet Home, which gets us back to our old weirdness of this stupid list, but that means that this is technically higher than Metal Gear 2 and Get to Room.
Yeah, no, it's totally fucked at this point. It doesn't matter. No, okay, so when I said I thought it'd be higher, but it's falling, I really like this game. It had, again, small problems, but it's not every day you get to see two genres mashed together, and it kind of worked out really well. And you know, I know it has its limits, but when you think of what platform it was on, I think it did well to maximize its limits.
I
can't get over how good it looks for an NES game. Like that's one of the. It's like one of my like things that jumps out at me, where I can't believe this was an NES game.
No, I agree.
I was. I'm gonna throw out a number. First one of the year. The new 26 between Def Jam and Yearwalk.
Dang. Am I terrible if I put it above Yearwalk?
Yeah, because I think we like that game better than what we thought. That episode we did back in December kind of said a lot about Yearwalk.
All right, fair enough. No, I like where you're at with it. Let's do it. I'm not going to question these. When you throw out a number, it's serious business. Yes,
Sweet Home's a good starting point. Kind of looking around. I mean, there's aspects of Tokyo Jungle I like better. I think there's aspects of Papers, Please I like better. 999. I mean, they're just completely different games, but you can go one way or the other. In hindsight, I think we overranked Deadly Premonition, but that was just such a weird time in my life when we were ranking that game. And I think this is a little bit better than Luigi's Mansion. The backtrack in Luigi's Mansion is what sucks.
Yeah, that's true. It felt good finding new things, not necessarily, yeah. All right, well, there it is. The Guardian Legend, our new 26. Listeners, we've got quite Lovely few weeks ahead of us. Next week, come back and hang out. We are talking Nightmare for the MSX. But we've also got Ring Fit Adventure, Civilization 6 starting off February, and our second in Wii Sports Killers coming up in February with Super Mario Galaxy 2. Stay tuned for all of that. Of course, check everything out over on thefreecheese.com. Until next week, thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener.